Travis, for once, I bet you the weather's better in Georgia than it is here. It's raining. It's been raining for a day and a half. It's going to rain for another 2 days. It's terrible, and it's cold, and I don't like it.
How often does it rain in LA? Like a month?
Oh, not even. I mean, it rains a couple of days here and there in the winter, and then it's perfect again. But it's just been cold. It's been in the 50s and
50s.
Yeah, that's cold, man. I have to wear a jacket. That's not right.
It was 41. I think it was 41 this morning when I woke up. We're going to be dipping down into the 30s later this week.
We shouldn't have to live anywhere where we wear a jacket. That's just not the way it should be.
Well, God bless you, sir. I hear that Sacramento, the boys and girls over there are going to be voting for a mileage tax. Is that right?
Well, yeah, but the conservative press is not giving it the fair treatment. So the real story is that there's a lot of electric cars out here, and because they don't buy gas, they don't pay sales tax on the gas, and therefore they're not paying for the roads. And so it's a completely reasonable position. Okay. The idea, and our tax is higher than anybody's. It's 61 cents a gallon is our state tax.
Good gosh.
So what they're coming up with, this bill does, if it passes, is to continue the study of possibly doing this in the future. It's not the tax itself. And what they're studying is replacing the sales tax with a mileage tax. So if they did it, they would reduce the gas tax to zero. So we would be saving 61 cents a gallon, and then they would charge something per mile. But of course, the conservative press is as horrible as the liberal press in really parsing this stuff out and being nuanced about it. They just want to let the whole country know that these wacko nut jobs in California are considering a mileage tax on top of all the other ridiculous taxes we have. And that's not really the truth of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I'm no longer feeling as sorry for you as I did for a few seconds. So.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a reasonable position. What I don't understand is, why don't they just continue the sales tax on the gas and do the mileage tax for people who have electric cars? Wouldn't that make, a little more sense? But they don't always make sense here.
Yeah. I guess it would be kind of hard to parse out who has the electric cars and who doesn't. But I guess you would send in your insurance form, your insurance on your car, and it would tell you if it's a Tesla or a Honda, a 1990 Honda.
Yeah.
And you either would be taxed or not. So I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Godspeed, sir. Speaking of bad news, Robert Duvall died.
Oh, yes. Just yesterday or the day before. So that kind of dates us. It's February 26 here that we're talking about this, February 2026. And he was one of my favorite actors, Travis. I always felt like there was a kind of a spiritual depth to the parts that he did.
Yeah.
And just very thoughtful. I picture him in my mind, and he just has this look of pondering, of thinking, of considering, of not jumping too fast. And it's just a very thoughtful, wise Christian way of thinking about things. And that's kind of the legacy that he has in my mind.
As a, the movie that stands out that hits our theme was The Prophet, or The Apostle, rather.
Yeah.
And I heard that he gave his testimony. I heard him give a testimony. No, I take that back. He did part of his touring. He hit like the 700 Club, Pat Robertson, sort of thing, because this is in the 90s. And so when he was doing press on this, he was hitting those venues as well, because he knew that he would get a lot of fanfare from the Christian audience. And when I saw the movie, I was like, I really liked it. And somebody said, well, is it biblical? And I said, well, it's not biblical. It's real. He plays a corrupt tele-evangelist type Pentecostal who does something really bad. He escapes his community and says, well, I'm going to do something between when whatever little time I have, I'm going to build something. So he builds a church, basically. And so he says in his testimony that he has his own belief, and he didn't really elaborate on what he believed. And before the show started, you said that he actually seems to have leaned towards Christian Science.
Yeah, that's what I read today in an article about him.
Yeah. Strange, because Christian Science is one of the least credible things I've ever read about.
It's nuts. It's really strange. But, man, it's one of those situations where we just have to trust the Lord. Where
Mm-hmm.
was his heart at the end?
Mm-hmm.
Did the Lord minister to him at the last minute? I'm glad I'm not making those decisions. Yeah. I hope I'll see him someday,
As a tribute to him, I rewatched my favorite scene in The Godfather. And it's sad. I mean, everybody in the scene is gone except for Al Pacino. Yeah. And it's the scene where after McCluskey hits breaks his jaw, it's the next day when they show up, and it's the scene where Michael clearly rises up and basically says, I got to take this by the horns because these guys aren't handling it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just such a great scene on so many levels. You have the old timers with the three brothers. Robert Duvall plays the step brother or the adopted brother. And just seeing him argue with James Caan. I keep wanting to call him Sonny, but I mean, Sonny and Tom arguing, and it's just such a great scene. And then he comes up with a plan to kill Sollozzo. And it's a perfect scene in a perfect movie. And as far as I'm concerned, every single scene in The Godfather is a closer.
It's such a great film. Yeah.
But just, he's so young there, and he's just so in control of his space in that scene. And everybody really contributes. Even the old men who really don't have lines in that scene, they're excellent in it. When they laugh at a certain point, and it's really just so well done. So I watched that scene, and I could see it once a day, every day for the rest of my life. So.
Isn't it great, Travis? As a Christian, we can appreciate the beauty of things like that. Like, I think one of my favorite scenes in all of filmdom is Tom Hanks in There's No Crying in Baseball from A League of Their Own.
Yeah.
It's like it just transcends anything else at the moment. It's so fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so great, and it's perfectly done, and every little bit of it is perfectly placed. I've done I've taken some theater classes in my life. I never went anywhere with it, and I realized how really hard it is, to get that right. And so I appreciate when it's really well done. It's like, it's like a perfect song. Some of the music we grew up with, where you hear that song and you're not even in the same place you were when you started listening. You're in some transcendent place, and as believers in Christ, we can use them as moments of worship, because of course it's all beauty is God's beauty. So I just thank the Lord for stuff like that. I don't feel a bit guilty at all about appreciating that kind of thing as a Christian, because it really should turn us to the Lord, even if it's entirely secular in its source.
Right. Oh yeah, it is beauty. It's just good art. And I think some Christian outlets like Angel Studios, they're starting to put out some stuff that Christians can be proud of. 90% of Christian art, whether it's music or movies or paintings, horrible.
Yeah, it is.
It's just so, I don't know. I don't even know where to go with it. It's just, but I will say that I hear that David cartoon was really good. And The Chosen is very well written.
Yeah.
The acting, and is it Jeremy Remy who plays Jesus?
Jonathan Rumi.
Jonathan Rumi, yeah. He does a really good job, but at the same time, and with all due respect to him, he's no Robert Powell in Jesus of Nazareth. And so like Frank Zeffirelli did Jesus of Nazareth, which in my opinion is not just one of the all-time best Christian films out there. I think it's just just a good film in its own right. And he had some of the top actors and actresses in the world contributing to this project. And so Anthony Quinn plays Caiaphas and Rod Steiger plays Pilate.
Yeah.
But just to give you sort of the comparison, I watched The Chosen, and one of the best scenes in The Chosen is the Nicodemus when he comes to see Jesus at night. The Chosen is better written than the same scene basically in Jesus of Nazareth. It's just better written, and it's also closer to the way the gospel describes it. He comes to him at night, and they're inside apparently, and they're just talking about this thing called the new birth. In Jesus of Nazareth, Nicodemus comes to Jesus just a day or two before he dies, and it's in the day, and they're kind of walking through the trees, and they're talking about the new birth, right? So The Chosen's better written, but the movie Jesus of Nazareth, the actor that plays Nicodemus is Laurence Olivier.
Yeah, how do you beat that?
And so it's just better acted.
Yeah.
So that would be and there's nothing I think that the two actors, Rumi and I don't know who plays Nicodemus, I forget his name, but they would probably agree with me, because you can't beat Laurence Olivier. He and Marlon Brando are the gold standard of acting.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, I think the Zeffirelli took too many liberties. The Chosen takes some liberties too that are not accurate, but Jesus of Nazareth took way too many liberties on some levels, but it was so well done. I'm writing my harmony on the Gospels, and I've finally gotten to John 9. And that's my favorite chapter in all of Scripture. And I always think of the way it's portrayed in Jesus of Nazareth. It's not perfect, but it's just so well acted. And so the man that plays the blind beggar, just his performance is amazing. So I don't know. I do love film. I even love it when it portrays faith, but I want good art to promote the gospel, not this shallow stuff that just has infiltrated the evangelical churches. I don't know what to do about it. I'm not an artist, so
I think for most of our life, Travis, the attitude of Christian actors and filmmakers and musicians was, well, we're going to get Jesus's name out there, and then the Holy Spirit can do what he wants with it. But I think I'm going to be bold and say this. I think that was kind of not only ignorant, but kind of arrogant. Like,
yeah,
they just didn't want to follow the rules. And the rules are, which we now get, is if you can't do the production values, If you can't spend the money on it, if you can't do it well, don't do it. Because in this day and age, you need the production value, you need the writing, you need the backgrounds, you need all of that stuff so that there's no distraction from the story. Otherwise, people are saying, this is stupid, it's badly written, it's hammy, it's clumsy, the acting's terrible. They're not going to, most of the time, I'm sure there's been people who come to the Lord through that, but most of the time they're just going to dismiss it like, why is it different for them? You know, you want to make your point, do it well, do it with style and sorry, with cash. You've got to have the money to do it. Sure. And now I think we finally get it. And there's some really, really excellent stuff out there the last few years.
Yeah. And, you know, YouTube it's in a lot of ways, it's the worst thing that's ever happened. But, you know, you and I benefit from it just right now. We're able to minister to a small group of people, just what we do. But, and so in one sense, it's horrible. In another sense, it's amazing. And like, I'm thinking in terms of musicians, the studio system in music was worse than the studio system in Hollywood in movies. In terms of having your music get on the radio and played and all of that. And so I don't think I'm a big Van Halen fan. But the reason they got airplay is that it was just the undeniability of just Eddie's playing and the swagger of Roth and all the things that went with that band.
That's right.
But there are bands that didn't have quite the charisma of a Van Halen that probably deserved radio time too, over and against the stuff that was being played on the radio. Like I didn't know who The Cure was until the late 80s, and they had been putting out stuff for like 6 years before I even knew who they were. But now you have these young people that are genuinely talented, and they can do, the YouTube is a workaround. They can go around it and just put their stuff out there, and they're getting recognized, which I love.
Yeah.
And so this era is tearing down that old system, the worst parts of it, at least. I hope we can get back to, instead of the Netflix where I heard Matt Damon talking about this on Joe Rogan, and I listened to most of the interview. It was really good. But he said, you know, when you're watching a film at home, you're not invested. And so it's easier to turn off the production. You can pull up your remote and turn it off. He has a friend that went and saw The Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
He said it was a disturbing movie, so disturbed by it that he actually got up to leave, but he couldn't leave. And so he stood in the back and watched it. And there were about 3 or 4 other guys doing the same thing. There's something about putting your money down and going in. It makes it harder to leave. You're already invested.
Right.
And sometimes we should see things that are uncomfortable.
Yes, that's right.
This autonomy where we can just not watch something, it's part of the problem. So in those days, it was imposed on us in many respects, and we had to find ways to get the other voice. Now there's so many voices that you can put yourself in a silo and never listen to anything else.
I have one discipline that I try to enforce on myself. Actually, it's with 2 different things, but I listen to a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of apologetics and history and philosophy and all that stuff. And I probably listen all the way through 9 out of 10.
Right.
I really try to make that commitment. Like, okay, I read this, I look at who it is and what the label is, what's the title, and then how long it is. And if I jump in, I'm there. I'm going to just do it all the way through. And I love, you know, I don't like the short stuff. I like at least 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. I've
Right.
listened to stuff that's 3 hours, and I try to do that with books. I try not to start a book and not finish it. I'm probably not as good with books, but I just feel like there's so many times something starts out weak and I stay with it and it's a big payoff. And so
Yeah.
that's been a real I don't know, it's just something I try to do, and
Yeah.
it's worked for me.
Well, in our last 10 minutes, you wanted to throw something at me about presuppositionalism.
Yeah. Okay.
Last week we talked about Eli Ayala's debate.
Yeah.
I will go ahead and say again, I think he slammed Dan Barker, but that doesn't
Yes.
mean that the argument that he gave proved God. It just means that atheism is irrational. And I think that, thank God for so many apologists out there that's proving this, including Eli. Even though I don't think his method is correct, his internal critique of atheism is sound, and atheism is cray cray. But so, anyways, you can throw your point about presuppositionalism, and we can go from there.
Yeah. So thank you. I think I've been thinking a lot about this, and you've thought this stuff through decades before me. But the point, I think the idea behind a traditional presuppositionalist argument is that you can go from just the Bible to Christianity in one leap.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to try to refute that. I think the idea that we live in a world where we use our rationality and our ability to think and our ability to consider and ponder just even our consciousness that we have, I think it's real easy to go from there to the fact that there must be a mind behind all of this, which is step one, I think, in the presup argument.
Well, actually, step one is basically the triune God who lives is the precondition for thinking. They throw that out as a proposition, and then they illustrate it over and over and over again.
So I don't think you can go that far. I think it's a really sound argument for the idea that there's a mind behind it. But we could be in the Matrix. We could be in some kind of simulation. It could be some form of solipsism where I'm the only person that's conscious and alive, and everything else is everybody. You're just a robot, Travis, in my, or a figment of my imagination.
Yeah.
Or it could be a God from another religion, because the next step after that is you could say that, okay, but it's only the Christian God that matches the metaphysics of where you can take that argument. And I get that. But one of the things, I think it was Dan Barker was the one that was arguing the atheist position.
Right.
He said something that got me thinking about this. He said, well, Christianity has its own internal, he claimed, contradictions and vagaries. So it seems to me that at the point that you decide there must be a mind behind this, after that, you have to use your rational resources to sort out which faith is the true faith. Because even if you say Christianity is the only one that has the metaphysics that match that, okay, fair enough. But it has all this other baggage that, that you then, we don't believe that it's really there. But see, at that point, then you have to switch into an evidential, rational argument to find the true religion. So I think it only takes you so far. That's my point.
Yeah. And I agree with you 100%. I think you have to first prove a kind of broad Abrahamic theism, which narrows your options down to three religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But you now got to make your evidential case for Christianity.
That's right.
Now, having said all of that, Eli won the debate because Dan Barker just doesn't know what he's talking about. Dan Barker should have spent however long he was given to prep for the debate. And I think I heard about this debate in November.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure that they were planning it up till before then. So let's say mid-October until now, just the debate was just a few weeks ago. He had November, December, January. He had 3.5 months to prepare for this debate. That's plenty of time. And he should have listened to lectures by Greg Bahnsen. He should have read the material of Greg Bahnsen and Cornelius Van Til. He should have watched tons and tons of podcasts that Eli gave, because Eli has put his stuff out there. It's not like he's hiding it. And Eli came with, I've heard his podcast on multiple occasions, and he's got a great voice. He's got a very good presence. He's a good looking guy. And he knows what he's talking about. So he should have known that this was how he was going to argue. And he just didn't discipline himself to do that. So that's part of the problem. I also don't think that Dan Barker, quite frankly, can handle the philosophical issues. I just don't think he understands them. But anyway, the internal critique just is this: you say that God is the precondition of thinking, and that we know about God wholly from his revealed revelation. And it's the system of truth contained in the Christian scriptures that gives us that knowledge of God, the whole kit and caboodle, everything. And at that point, you can say, okay, your claim is that the Bible is the inerrant word of God. And then you try to go in and you do the internals of the Bible. Now, what Dan did is he gave broad considerations, which questions and genuine arguments. He didn't actually give an argument.
Right.
The Bible has formal contradictions in it. And so it was very easy for Eli to dismiss. But I think that if Eli had to debate someone like Randall Rouser, who's a Christian, he's mainly a left-leaning, or someone like Dan McClellan, who is a self-professed Mormon who thinks that the Bible is chock full of contradictions, I think that Eli would have had more trouble. Now, where you'd have the advantage of those guys is they're not very well studied in philosophy. Randall Rouser is well studied in philosophy, but Dan McClellan doesn't seem to have an appreciation for philosophy.
Reminds me of Richard Dawkins criticizing the Bible, talking about how horrible God is. It just makes him sound like a kindergartner saying, well, Daddy, God sounds like a really mean guy. It's like, look, dude, we've been talking about this for 2,000 years. Go read something and then come back with some kind of, intelligent comment about the Bible. You make it sound like, well, gee, us Christians, we never thought about that before. Wow, you must be right. Yeah.
I have a friend. She was talking to me today about this. She has a little girl. I think her daughter is 4.
Uh-huh.
And there's this joke. She tells this story all the time where her daughter just will get mad at her and say, "Well, you're not my best friend anymore."
Yeah.
And I said, how often do you lose that status with your daughter? And she says, at least twice a week, minimum. I said, well, when does that status get restored? She goes, at night when she wants somebody to cuddle with.
Yeah.
and your best friends again. And that's kind of the atheist. The atheist is like, well, you're a meanie because you don't do all these things that I want, so you're just a big meanie. And then it's the atheist is always cuddling back up to God because there are all these ideas that can't really make sense. They can't mean anything unless there is an eternal mind that contemplates them.
That's right.
So it's the same kind of thing. Van Til was right when he said that the atheist is the little girl sitting on her dad's lap, slapping his face. She doesn't understand that if he weren't holding her up, she wouldn't be able to slap him.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting how the atheists critique Christianity using Christian values and morality.
Yeah, absolutely. No. Well, and as I said, classical apologists can use this. Frank Turek wrote a book called Stealing from God, where he basically uses the internal critique of atheism that our presuppositional friends have given, and so we should benefit from it.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes they criticize us rightly. It's okay.
Sure.
Sometimes we need to hear it.
Of course.
We're out of time. I
don't want to hear that, but I guess I have to.
Yeah.
Godspeed, sir.
Love you, Travis. See you later.